They woke the world to their magic, and their wizardry transcends time. Many have passed on, but their heroics live forever. On football's greatest stage, the gods of the game have earned their encore. Pelé, Beckenbauer, Cruyff, Maradona. Revered today by generations unborn when they weaved their spell. In the streets of South America, up laneways throughout Europe, on the dirt roads of any African village, the deeds of the past inspire the players of tomorrow. It's the cup of hope, the cup of dreams. It's football's biggest prize on the greatest stage of all. Time is needed to put things in proper perspective. So it will take a few more years yet before Germany's World Cup heroes of 2014 can be set against the great German teams of the past. But when that happens, the short, unassuming figure of Philipp Lahm will stand as a giant of the game. Lahm played in 3 World Cups. The first in 2006 as an all-star defender. The second in 2010 as an all-star defender and stand-in captain. The third in 2014, going into the midfield and as captain, holding up the World Cup trophy. He played his football with a fierce determination and a quiet integrity. Whether questioning the transfer policy of his beloved Bayern Munich, criticising the leadership of former national coaches, or telling his injured captain, Michael Ballack, that he would not willingly hand back the captain's armband on his return. Indeed, he kept the armband and became the most influential German captain since Franz Beckenbauer 40 years earlier. His Bayern Munich manager, Pep Guardiola, was the first to switch him from a commanding fullback to a defensive midfielder and was adamant he could play any position.
If tomorrow I decide to play a striker, he will be the best striker in Europe, believe me.
Philipp Lahm played 10 years with the national team and 15 years with Bayern Munich. He won a World Cup, 8 Bundesliga and a Champions League, and the admiration of all.
I hope the fans remember me as a good footballer who has been playing football at a high level for a couple of years or so. Not more and not less. I think I have done that. I would at least say that, if that does not sound arrogant.
Up next, the 4 giant personalities that made France '98 such a controversial World Cup. At France 1998, football's greatest stage was a giant stage. For the first time, FIFA had decided the World Cup tournament would be contested by 32 nations instead of 24. And in keeping with the theme, organisers of the opening ceremony in Paris were convinced that size mattered. The ceremony was highlighted by a parade of giants. 4 figures, 70 feet high, weighing 38 tons each. The 4 giants representing the 4 colours of humanity and named Ho, Romeo, Pablo and Musa, each started at different points of Paris and lumbered their way to a symbolic meeting spot at the Place de la Concorde, accompanied by an array of jugglers, acrobats, dancers, and contortionists. Coincidentally, the France '98 tournament would also feature 4 giant personalities. Even if one of them wasn't there at all, one left rather early, one went missing in action when it counted most, and one was absolutely stunning. The one who wasn't there at all probably got as much publicity as any player who was. Paul Gascoigne, Gazza, had made the FIFA All-Star team in 1990 when he carried England to their only semi-final appearance outside of their 1966 triumph. But by 1998, his infamous lack of discipline and other personal struggles had begun to seriously impact his reliability, if not yet his brilliance. England coach Glenn Hoddle believed Gascoigne could no longer be risked in the demanding environment of a World Cup and cut him from the squad, creating a media storm and signalling a rapid acceleration of Gazza's decline. When Hoddle told him of his decision, Gascoigne trashed the coach's room at the camp in Spain. He never played for England again. Another England player grabbing headlines in '98 was David Beckham. At 23, the hottest property in Premier League with Manchester United, but still establishing his reputation at international level. Having seen firsthand the ruination of Gascoigne, Hoddle was perhaps oversensitive to the distractions caused by the media obsession with Beckham's private life as the fiancé of Spice Girl Victoria Adams. Although Beckham was the only Englishman to have played all 8 qualifying matches, the coach questioned his focus and refused to start him for the first 2 group matches. After losing the second match to Romania, Hoddle finally picked Beckham for the 3rd match against Colombia, and he responded by bending a free kick into the net for England's 2nd goal and lifting them into the round of 16. But in the next match against Argentina, Hoddle's fears about Beckham's focus were realised when he was antagonised by Diego Simeone. After being brutally fouled, Beckham was on the ground and flicked back his leg in a mild but unnecessary retaliation. Simeone took a dive and Beckham was red-carded, leaving England to battle to a draw with 10 men before losing on penalties. Beckham was shattered, while Hoddle's reaction was to say the young star should not be blamed, and then promptly blamed him.
I don't think it's a time now to make scapegoats in David Beckham or to blame anybody. I think David's the first to admit that it's a silly mistake that he's made on a football pitch. One that I felt wasn't violent conduct, but it was something that at this level he's got to learn that we can't afford to do them things. Not just David, but any player that's playing in a tournament this big, you can't afford to do it. You're going to get punished, and we have been punished on it.
Beckham even received death threats from fans who blamed him for the defeat. And years later, he said he believed Hoddle's criticism fueled some of the frenzied anger directed at him. With England heading home after the round of 16, the focus fell back on the defending champions Brazil. In the same round, the world's best player, Ronaldo, had exploded with 2 goals in a 4-1 defeat of Chile. Another goal in the semi-final against Netherlands took his total for the tournament to 4. And as the reigning Ballon d'Or winner and World Player of the Year, the 22-year-old was on his way to fulfilling what many had felt was his destiny. But the pressure on such a young player was immense, and Ronaldo cracked. Just after lunch on the day of the final against France, he suffered a convulsive fit. His roommate, Roberto Carlos, screamed for help, and others, including defender Sampaio, rushed to his aid, preventing him from swallowing his tongue. Ronaldo was left off the team sheet, but after he begged coach Mario Zagallo to play, he was reinstated, many believe under pressure from sponsors. But he was a shadow of himself, having little impact on the contest, as his equivalent in the France team asserted his authority. As host nation, France would have been under the microscope anyway, But an embarrassing capitulation in the final qualifying stages for the 1994 World Cup intensified the pressure. Gerard Houllier had been sacked as coach, replaced by his assistant, Aimé Jacquet, who in the minds of the French media carried baggage from the 94 debacle. For Jacquet, there was only one way to go: invest in youth and start again. Fortunately for him and for France, a young midfielder of Algerian descent was crying out for selection. Zinedine Zidane made his international debut in August 1994 at the age of 22. 5 months later, an incident in England seemed initially to be a disaster for France's national team. Instead, it was the making of their surprising success. Eric Cantona assaulted a spectator in Premier League, was banned for the rest of the season, and Jacquet stripped him of the French captaincy. Given his head, Zidane took over as the national team's playmaker, and the brilliant but abrasive and disruptive Cantona never played for his country again. Jacquet also transitioned winger David Ginola and striker Jean-Pierre Papin out of the side. And closer to the World Cup introduced youngsters Thierry Henry, Patrick Vieira and David Trezeguet. The French media was sceptical, many calling for the coach to be dumped. But with a fresh dynamic, the team exceeded all expectations, bounding through the group stages with 9 goals to 1. But a 2-1 win against Croatia in the semi-final was not enough to change the perception that Brazil would breeze to victory in the final. But Jacquet had discussed with Zidane a weakness in Brazil's defence at set pieces, and Zidane exploited it. 27 minutes into the final, he headed his first into the net from a corner kick, and 19 minutes later, another corner kick, another header, another goal. With Ronaldo unable to raise a challenge and the rest of the Brazilian team unable to step up, the French team breezed to an unlikely victory. Emmanuel Petit's 93rd minute goal providing a 3-0 scoreline, the most decisive victory in any World Cup final. Zidane was man of the match, and while his best football was still ahead of him, it established him as the game's glamour star heading into the new millennium. Of 98's other giant personalities, Ronaldo too would eventually fulfill his destiny. David Beckham's career would blossom, going on to riches, celebrity, and ultimately forgiveness from England fans. Gazza's story was not so happy. But that's the nature of sport. It's the contrast between triumph and despair which makes football's greatest stage such intriguing theatre. After the break, once ruled by committee, England finally won respect with a one-man brains trust. Paraguayan goalkeeper José Luis Chilavert is one of football's most unforgettable characters. And while he never tasted the ultimate success at the World Cup, he certainly made a name for himself on the world stage. A man who revolutionized the role of the modern goalkeeper, and not afraid to say so himself.
Until that time, a goalkeeper was just someone who stood between the posts and always stayed within the penalty area. I changed all that. I took penalties, free kicks and more. These days, many guys play that way, but I started it.
Chilavert had humble beginnings. He didn't wear shoes until he was 7, but soon grew in confidence. He amassed 74 caps with Paraguay, earning all-star selection at the 1998 World Cup, and was named the world's best keeper 3 times. But he is perhaps more fondly known for his feats at the other end of the pitch. An eccentric character, Chilavert was not afraid to break convention, often venturing up the field, becoming a successful free kick and penalty taker. But not everyone warmed to his marauding style. The fans used to freak out and scream at me to get back in goal, he said. Across club and international football, he netted a remarkable 67 goals as a keeper, second only to Brazilian stopper Rogério Ceni. Chilavert scored 8 with Paraguay, 7 in World Cup qualifying, and is the only keeper to ever score a hat-trick. But while his odd foray down the field might be interpreted as reckless, the powerful Paraguayan maintains there was indeed method to his madness. It wasn't a fluke, it was the reward for hours of work. I always used to stay behind after training and take 80 to 120 free kicks, he said. At the 1998 World Cup, he became the first goalkeeper to take a free kick on football's greatest stage, and nearly the first to score when he fired a shot against Bulgaria in the group stages. But ultimately, his role on the team was as a shot stopper, and he did it well. He was instrumental in Paraguay's round of 16 appearance in 1998, keeping 2 clean sheets as his side progressed through the group stages, before a 1-0 extra-time loss to eventual champions France ended their run. Chilavert was not always a hero, though. In the 2002 World Cup qualifying match against Brazil, his brash, impulsive nature got the better of him, spitting on Roberto Carlos. He was banned for 3 matches, and the true meaning of his nickname, El Bulldog, became apparent. Chilavert claims he was provoked, but moved on from the incident to play a part in another round of 16 appearance in 2002. A 1-0 loss to Germany drew criticism, but as Chilavert mused, it could have been worse. What a lot of people don't remember in the Germany game is that I saved 5 one-on-ones, he said. Chilavert retired in 2004 and was given a testimonial match in which he did what Chilavert did best, scoring from the spot. A fitting end to a career of one of football's most unusual characters, a man who made it his mission to wow on football's greatest stage. In the years before England triumphed on football's greatest stage, the stuffy and traditional English Football Association suffered from delusions of grandeur. The feeling that they were the best in the world was so strong, they almost didn't bother going to the 1962 World Cup because they didn't think there was anything to prove. But they did go, and an earlier than expected exit brought swift change. Manager Walter Winterbottom resigned after 16 years at the helm, and a proven new mentor, Alf Ramsey, was enlisted. Ramsey was a tough, dependable defender, nicknamed the General for his leadership and tactical nous. He was a member of Tottenham's First Division winning team of 1951 and captained England in 3 of his 32 games with the national team. But it was when he retired in 1955 to become manager of Third Division side Ipswich Town that he found his calling. He lifted them to Division 1 within 6 years, becoming English champions in 1962, their first stint in the top flight. Ramsey only accepted the England role when promised complete control of team selection, a vast change from Winterbottom's era, when a separate selection committee would perform that role. Said legendary Italian coach Vittorio Pozzo of the selection system, "No great team was ever built on that." Under the total control of Ramsey, so dawned a new era. He became England's first proper manager. And perhaps it was their first proper chance to win a World Cup. Using a new narrow formation dubbed the Wingless Wonders, the team bonded with a common goal: He trained them harder and for longer than ever before and set them ambitious targets. "We will win the World Cup," was his bold proclamation. An uneventful draw with Uruguay opened England's campaign and would set the tone for overly defensive showings from opponents. They got past an undisciplined Argentina and highly fancied Portugal in the knockouts. And the stage was set for the final against West Germany, a team which had never beaten England in 5 previous encounters. And that trend continued. West Germany scored first, but goals to Jeff Hurst and Martin Peters gave England the lead, before Wolfgang Weber equalised in the 89th minute. But it was Hurst's heroics, 2 goals in extra time, that delivered England the Holy Grail. And while Hurst was hailed, so was Ramsey. Defensive midfielder Nobby Stiles proclaimed, "It was you, Alf. You did it. We'd have been nothing without you." Ramsey would continue for 8 more years, taking them to the semi-finals of Euro 1968 and the quarter-finals of the 1970 World Cup. But when England failed to qualify in 1974, he was sacked. The second longest-serving coach of the national team, with the second best strike rate. He took a sabbatical from coaching until September 1977, when he took over as caretaker manager at Birmingham City. But he stayed for only 4 months, quitting for good in 1978. During the 1998 World Cup, Ramsey suffered a stroke and passed away in April 1999, aged 79. But Alf Ramsey's legacy lives on, the man who made England's dreams come true for the very first time on football's greatest stage. We've already mentioned Alf Ramsey has the second best record of any long-term England coach, but do you know who has the best strike rate? The answer up next, when we also address the lighter side of the World Cup, with the soothsaying cephalopod named Paul. Welcome back. Before the break, we asked which England coach has the best strike rate. Sam Allardyce won the only match he ever coached for the Three Lions. But among those with more than 20 games in charge, the winner is Italian Fabio Capello. Capello won 28 of his 42 as coach for a strike rate of 66.7%. Ramsey is next with a strike rate of 61.1% from his 113 games. But a World Cup and 11 years at the helm puts him head and shoulders above the rest as England's greatest ever coach. The unpredictable nature of football's greatest stage makes the World Cup such an intriguing spectacle. And it's why we call in the experts. Like Paul the Octopus. Quite the successful psychic cephalopod when it came to predicting World Cup matches in 2010. Hatched at Weymouth Sea Life Centre in England, Paul earned a transfer to Oberhausen in Germany, where his oracle career began in the 2008 Euro tournament and continued in the 2010 World Cup, garnering an impressive strike rate of 85.7%. Paul made his selections by choosing a muscle from one of 2 boxes bearing the flags of competing nations. And as his winning record improved, the world's media turned him into a cult figure. He correctly tipped all 7 of Germany's matches in the World Cup, including their defeat by Spain in the semi-final and their win in the 3rd-place playoff. And he also got Spain right in their win in the final over Netherlands. Paul received a number of death threats, mostly to turn him into calamari. But whether they came from a disgruntled German chef or a mean-spirited Dutch gourmand, they could never get their tentacles on him. Some questioned the validity of his predictions, but in truth, he was a genius.
The easiest thing to try to explain it is that he has 9 brains and we have 1. So how can we know what he thinks?
Paul paved the way for other football-predicting animals, from an elephant to a sea lion to a polar bear, but they only dared to dream of Paul's prowess. Although he passed away soon after the 2010 tournament, Paul, like so many of the game's great players, inked his name on football's greatest stage.